Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs.
Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Now, this week we have something special because we usually do discussions with people about their work, but we have our first repeat guest, and that is composer Darien Shulman, whose work includes For Heaven's Sake, American Vandal, and the new show that everyone should be checking out, Players, on Paramount Plus. Welcome to the show, Darien.
I'm your first repeat? That is
cool. You're a first repeat.
I love that.
Well, I guess my first question is, how did you get involved with Players? Because it's a great concept for a show, and I feel like it's unsung. It's like the unsung hero of comedy and television right now.
We just got a great review that in Entertainment Weekly where the critic admitted that like this show just flew under my radar, and I just discovered it. But yeah, they gave us an A, which was awesome.
Yeah.
So Players is essentially the same creative team as American Vandal. So it's Tony Yacenda, Dan Perrault are the creators. They wanted to do sort of a departure, so to speak, as far as like, with American Vandal, they were sort of doing the true crime homage. And for Players, it's more of a sports docu-series homage. So think like the 30 for 30 ESPN type shows, or Last Dance on Netflix. So yeah, they brought me on for this, and it was great.
I'm going to interrupt this interview for 1 second. We want to thank PixelView, one of our sponsors. They're a streaming solution for filmmakers. PixelView lets you stream your work to remote clients for easy collaboration, and it works with both on-set teams and post-production teams. With built-in video chat, you can discuss and make changes in real time and stream directly from your editing software. Or you can use the hardware encoder to stream from DaVinci Resolve or the camera on set. See the promo code and the link in the video description below. Now back to the show. How did you guys meet? Because this is a long-time collaboration. So how did you guys initially meet and get involved with each other?
Initially, it's basically a family friend of my parents is the next door neighbor to Tony's parents. Yeah. Shout out to Bob. I was at some I don't remember what it was, some kind of birthday party or something, my mom's friend, and anyway, he approached me and gave me sort of Tony's contact information. Tony was I was finishing grad school. Tony was at Emerson, and we started a correspondence. He put me in touch with his sort of all of his sort of student film, film student friends, and I started collaborating with basically all of them, and that continued. I mean, we didn't actually meet in person. This was back in 2007. We didn't actually meet in person until 2012. Because we were just both in, we were in separate cities basically the whole time. He was first in Boston, then he moves out to LA. They all move out to LA, and I stayed in New York. And but throughout that time, I was collaborating with them on, it started with short, like digital shorts that they would upload to YouTube, and some of them went viral, and they started to get noticed by, outlets like Funny or Die and that sort of thing. And so when, as the projects got bigger and bigger, they just kept coming back to me for music. So, oh, what a cute What a cutie.
Yeah,
um,
he loves attention too.
yeah,
When we walk him, he'll cut people off so that they'll be like, oh, hey.
nice.
So
But yeah, so when they got to American Vandal, yeah, I was the person they called for music. So it's been a long time collaboration. We know each other's, shorthands. We speak each other's language. I kind of know what they're going for. I would say a good 90 to 95% of the time.
okay.
So it's a good collaboration.
Now, I think about um, like when I worked in sound, you would get a lot of funny descriptions of what someone wanted. They'd be like, I need and then they would try to make the sounds verbally. For the music, is it the same thing, or are they just handing you, here's a similar thing that sounds like it?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nowadays. It's so easy to get like
Mhm.
music references because it's just it's the it's just a mouse click away. Like you just
Yeah,
send a Spotify link or something. So it's often like they'll give me something, they'll send me some track, and they'll be like, I want something that kind of sounds like this.
yeah,
What's I mean, and so you're that kind of comes with its own like drawbacks. So sometimes you can get a case of what we call demo love, or
yeah.
temp love,
Temp love.
where you've got the temp track in there, and it's you've been kind of living with that for a long time, and then the composer finally comes with like what the composer wants, and so there's a certain resetting that you have to do to kind of refresh your ears and listen with like a sort of open mind. And sometimes the composer just misses the mark. I mean, that's a thing that happens, but it's it's often one thing I like to ask my directors to do is to just mute their temp music and like watch the scene down a few times without
Mhm.
any music at all, just to get a reset of the of their ears. If there's no temp track, it's really my job to sort of translate whatever they come to me with, whether it's verbal or like you said, like making noises with their mouths, and translate it into music. I mean, I'm most of the time I'm dealing with, I'm working with people who are not, they're not musicians, and they don't really have like the sort of language to describe like what they're after as far as like technical, specs or anything. So it's often communicated as like emotions. So it's like they'll say something like, I want it to be, I wanted to feel ominous. And I mean, it's really my job to sort of take that information, watch the scene, and compose something that, I think foots that bill.
Yeah. Now I've talked to some editors, and they've worked on projects where composers had worked with creative teams so much, coming back together each project, and they're able to sort of, I guess, create temp scores or to create small temp pieces for the editors so that the director doesn't fall and get temp love. Is that something you're able to do, or is that dependent on other
You mean
things?
like composing tracks before? Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I've done that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I like to build a. I don't want to go as far as to say like a library,
Mm-hmm.
but let's call it like a little mini library, for lack of a better word, where like it's, you know, maybe 15, 20 tracks
Yeah.
that are like between 90 seconds and 2 minutes and 30
Hmm.
seconds. And I try to like run a sort of gamut of, you know, different emotions. And this is like after having read the script and, you know, kind of knowing the sort of basic beats of the plot. And so you know, I'll have maybe a scene in mind, but it's loose and it's not
Yeah.
to be prescriptive. Um, and yeah, like you know, the editors will work with that. I'll also give them, um, uh, you know, scores for previous projects.
Yeah.
So like for players, you know, I've worked with the editor. One of the editors, Tim Johnson, was the
Hmm.
director for Heaven's Sake,
Okay.
and so uh, he, you know, I gave him a link to, you know, the score for
Yeah.
Heaven's Sake, and he was able to template that as well. They also had the scores for, you know, for American Vandal too.
Yeah.
So um, whether it's the, you know, whether it's the temp stuff that I do specifically for the project, or, you know, the stuff that like is for previous projects that might not be like in this right, you know, sound palette that I'm going for with this show.
Hmm.
Um, it, it's all my stuff, which I find easier to like create something that is sort of similar to something I've done, rather than feeling like I'm, you know, trying to get as close to something as possible without sounding like I'm, you know, ripping it off, or
Yeah.
uh, you know, I mean, I try to be as original as I can. You know?
So what was your, like, how did you approach players? Like, what was your creative process for this?
So the start was because I'm not a sports guy. I mean, I'm not real like it's never been something that I've been that into. But what was important, I think, at least coming into this, was that I got a real sense of like what are the, you know, what do all these sort of sports documentaries and sports docu-series have in common? Like what are the beats of,
Hmm.
what are the ticks that they all have? So I essentially just watched a lot of that stuff, and you know, paid pretty close attention to, you know, the score choices. Uh, I think Last Dance was the biggest influence for
Yeah.
me. Um, but then, you know, from there you take it to a place where you have to apply it now to the show that you're working on. So Players is about esports, right? And it's centered on this League of Legends
Yeah.
professional team, and so now you've got like you've got the sort of video game element sort of superimposed onto the sports docuseries
Yeah.
element, and League of Legends has its own score,
Yeah.
so to speak. Like they have a huge library of tracks, um, that, you know, it's like the kind of stuff that they play like at events, you know, in
Hmm.
between matches, or, you know, underneath like color commentary, that kind of thing. Um, but I listened to a lot of that as well. So I was essentially trying to like fuse the two together, fuse the two
Yeah.
elements, like the sports docu-series element and the League of Legends itself element
Wow.
together. Um,
Are you a gamer? Like, did you play lots of video games, or are you like sports and
I
video games, or no?
well, no, I've played video games my whole life. I mean, I'm a little older, so I was playing like the original like NES, those
Yeah.
kind of games, like it's 80s stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's been pretty wild to see how far like the technology has come.
It
But
is
yeah, I mean,
crazy.
it's yeah. And I mean, of course, like the idea that you could do this kind of thing professionally and like not just make a living, but make
Yeah.
a huge amount of money.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it's funny because I had a friend in high school in the 90s, and it was just starting where they would like get sponsors, and his brother got a sponsor, and I was like, what? You
yeah,
can get paid for this? It was just
Yeah.
so mind-blowing. Um,
yeah, and our parents were. I mean, they all told us it was a huge waste of time.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've actually played League of Legends before.
Yeah.
I started playing it, and it's really hard. It's not an easy game to learn. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but it is daunting. Like the
Yeah.
amount of just stuff that you have to kind of learn to get even kind of remotely good at it.
Yeah. What was your go-to game? I know this is not composing questions, but what was your
Oh yeah,
favorite game
you mean like
in the NES era?
in the NES era? Oh, uh, well, Mario 3 was probably
Oh my gosh.
the
Such a great
the best. Um, there is a game called, you know, the movie The Goonies. There is a game.
The Wiz.
Yeah.
Or sorry,
No,
sorry.
Goonies.
Yeah,
Remember
Goonies.
there's a game called Goonies 2,
Yeah.
which I had always loved, and I could never understand why it was called Goonies 2 when there wasn't a sequel to Goonies.
Yeah.
And I found out later that in Japan they had released a game that they did not release in the US called.
Oh, really?
And they released Goonies 2 in the US as well. So,
That's
but I
crazy.
love that game too. Yeah, it was a struggle to get my parents to buy me a new video game every
Yep, same here. Well, they were expensive.
$5. You
Yeah.
know, it's ridiculous. And now they, you know, you can buy like those mini NES consoles that have like 100
Yeah.
games on them for like, you can buy the whole thing for $20.
See, I always loved Super Mario Brothers 2 as well.
Yeah,
And I know that it's just a reskinned game,
right.
but I really think that they should bring back the ability to play like the Princess, Toadstool, Luigi, and like choosing your character. I thought that was a fantastic way of engaging the characters.
Yeah, there's a game called on the Switch now called Mario Party, in which you can choose those games, but it's not a traditional sort of Mario game where it's like levels and that kind of thing. These are like kind of more casual, just sort of one-off games that you play. But yeah, I loved Super Mario 2. That was a great one. And I'm really nerding out right now, but there in Japan, going back to Japan, there was a Super Mario Brothers 2.
It was crazy hard.
Which was, it was super hard. It was essentially the same as the same as Super Mario 1. Like it looked exactly the same in terms of like what the graphics were and everything.
Yeah.
It was just ridiculoly hard. And I guess Nintendo of America was like, we're not releasing this in the States. They'll be mad. So yeah.
It'd be like Battletoads. Everyone would be like, "What the hell? This is so hard."
Right, Battletoads. Yeah, I tried. A friend of mine had that, and I tried it once, and I was just like, I'm not doing this again.
Now, how did you come up with the intro theme for the show?
I love that theme. That was one of the first things I wrote. On this project. Yeah, like that was. I wrote that during while they were filming, actually, and I came up with the the theme is it's centered around like the cello, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the main melody. So I came up with that part first. I knew it had to be short. I knew it had to be kind of, driving. Again, The Last Dance was an influence on that. They, Tony and Dan said to me, like, whatever you come up with, we want it to center around low strings and keep it high energy, throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And usually I'll write, I mean, in the past, where like for American Vandal, for example, and for heaven's sake, I'd write maybe 5 to 8 options for the title theme.
Yeah.
Before we kind of hone in on the one that we, really want. I wrote this one, it was a one-off. I sent it off to Tony and Dan, and they said, this is it. This is it. You're like, you don't need to write anything else. We want this one. So, yeah, it's, I think it's really a strong title theme, and I'm really gratified that like a lot of people have come up to me and said like that title theme is sick. Like it's kind of been the one thing that everyone has mentioned to me.
Are you gonna make it your ringtone now? So
I would like to release it as a ringtone. Like I'd like Paramount Plus to release to do like a full soundtrack.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I would love to get that out there.
Yeah, and ideally in vinyl too, or in vinyl, or just
yeah, and of course in vinyl. Vinyl.
Yeah,
I'll release CDs,
cassettes, 8 tracks. Let's just keep going down.
We can like
wax cylinders.
Those. I was just gonna say, yeah. Yeah, no, I would love to do a soundtrack. I think there's a lot of fun music in there that people would like to
for sure
hear, like standalone.
Now, how did you work with like the plot to change your music, or how did the plot affect your music?
So there's sort of themes that kind of build on themselves throughout the series. The plot itself, it's hard to talk about without like going too deeply into spoiler territory. But when we get to the later episodes, when they're having these important games, when there are important like specific moments where one character has like some kind of breakthrough where it changes the way he plays the game and makes the team better. I'll do a thing where I'll recall an earlier theme that like I had associated with that character.
Yeah,
kind of turn it on its head. Maybe reorchestrate it, make it a little more intense, or pull back, like strip it down to its like bare essentials. I like bookending things. I think I've talked about this before with you, but like if there's like, say there's a melody or a some kind of distinctive thing that I have like right at the beginning of the first episode. At the end of the last episode, I don't want to say I do the same thing, but I take that element and I somehow work it in to the ending. Those like the last few moments of the last episode. I did that.
Interesting.
Did that with American Vandal as well. Those kind of things. I think like growing up listening to film scores and TV scores and stuff, I would always notice and really enjoy when a composer would do that. And it's something that I've tried to like, I've tried to emulate. So
Now, how many instruments are you able to play, and versus like is like a lot of it done through like MIDI keyboards, that type of thing, or is it
it's
uh
mostly MIDI keyboards. There's some live guitar,
yeah,
um, uh, but it's mostly electronic. But I mean, that's more of a budgetary consideration than
yeah,
anything else. And I think that for this particular universe, the sort of hybrid orchestral slash electronic um, style
yeah,
of composing just fits for this
yeah.
universe because
Oh, completely fits. Yeah.
we're talking about like video games.
Yeah.
So
Well, it'd be really weird if you're like, we researched, like South America traditional drum beats, like or something crazy like that, because this
yeah, sure,
works for this.
right,
Now, I have one last question for you.
yeah.
What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or show to watch?
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Oh man, guilty pleasure, guilty pleasure, guilty pleasure, guilty pleasure. Ah, I that's you caught me off guard. I like watching. This is gonna sound really weird, but I every now and then I'll get on this kick where I'll watch like an old sitcom from my childhood, from like
Yeah.
the 80s or something, because I can't explain it why. Maybe it's like nostalgia on my part, but I started watching Perfect Strangers again.
That was great show. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's a great show.
The most ridiculous show,
Yeah.
and I would just sort of I like watching it. 'Cause it's just kind of fascinating about like how TV got made,
Yeah.
back then, and what this sort of style of
Yeah.
even the music, what the styles were, and it's just, I mean, it's nothing I would do today. I mean, obviously it looks so dated,
Yeah.
but yeah, that kind of thing is, I just find that fascinating. And
What
those theme
so
songs are all this like, how all those theme songs sound the same
yeah.
because they were written by like the same two or three people, I think. That whole, ABC Friday night
Yeah.
lineup. Um, uh, yeah, it's good stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is a guilty pleasure.
I always go to MASH and Cheers. Those are my
Yeah,
two from the 80s, because especially Cheers, it blows me away how that first episode, everything's there. Like it's not like it took a year to find the characters, find the sound, that type of stuff. It was just there.
I yeah, I know what you mean, and I just thought of something as a child. I used to think that because back then almost every TV theme had like lead vocals, and
Yeah.
I used to think that they were sung, like the characters were actually singing the.
That would actually be awesome.
Like I
But
thought that for some reason I thought that like Tony Danza was singing in like the theme
yeah.
to Who's the Boss or whatever. Like, um,
Well,
yeah.
I just went to Elton John's concert and I still sing "Hold Me Closer, Tony Danza" as opposed to "Hold Me Closer, Tiny Danza." So,
How
well,
was
thank you.
that?
Yeah, it was a great concert. It was
Yeah.
the day the Queen died, so like there was like
Oh,
a special moment and everything. It was a phenomenal concert.
that's awesome.
So my only complaint, but I completely understand why, is they did it in the Sky Dome,
Hmm.
which is not good for sound.
Oh, okay.
But the problem is he has like 60,000 people who want to see him, right? So
Right.
it's like, so I wish he could have done it in Massey Hall, which is like our Carnegie Hall.
Okay,
The
yeah.
sound is just like I've sat in the back row and heard, like it's almost like I couldn't hear a better
Yeah,
sound like from a CD.
yeah.
So yeah,
That's
so
so cool though.
yeah, it
Um,
was it was a very interesting and fun concert to go to. So
yeah, I would love to see Elton John. Uh, you know, I feel like I'm running out of time. He keeps saying he's retiring.
it's his farewell tour.
Oh,
And they're documenting it. It ends in Dodger Stadium, so you got to fly out to LA.
Okay, that's a good excuse.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks so much for joining me this week.
Thank
And,
you for having me. This was great.
And have a great week.
Yeah, have a great week to you, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Well, next time I'm in LA, we'll have to grab pints.
Oh yeah, well you'd have to come to.
New York. Sorry,
Yeah,
New York. I'm thinking of Elton John in LA.
Yeah.
So,
Indeed.
well, that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.
Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs.